Hello, my name is Tomasz Rokicki. I am from Warsaw University of Life Science, Poland. My topic is supply chains in the automotive industry during the COVID-19 pandemic. The case of Polish companies. Agenda. I have 3 points. Purpose and methodology of research. Second, results and conclusions. The main objective is to present a description during the COVID-19 pandemic, including the supply chain of enterprises from the automotive industry, taking into account the type of the main supply. The specific objectives are identification and characterization of the types of enterprises operating in automotive supply chains, determining changes during the pandemic in enterprises from the automotive industry, depending on the type of the main supply market, showing description in supply chain in the automotive industry and ways to counteract this unfavorable situation depending on the type of the main supply market. Method of selecting objects for research. Enterprises from the automotive industry operating in Poland were deliberately selected for research. Then 500 enterprises from the automotive industry were selected for research using a random selection method. In Poland, there were approximately 2,000 companies operating directly in the automotive industry, and several thousand had indirect relationship. The next are sources of materials. The data sources were 500 surveys conducted in June 2023 in the form of a direct telephone interview. Okay, the main supply market of the surveyed enterprise. The basic criterion of the analysis is the division according to the main supply market. Among the 500 surveyed enterprises, as many as 38% had mainly local supply market, 28 a national supply market, 15 regional one, 7 domestic and neighboring countries, 9 from the European Union, and only 5% global one. This shows that companies from the automotive industry most often sourced goods from their immediate surroundings. It also points to an extensive supply chain with many links. Most parts and materials for the automotive industry came from Asia. Small business did not purchase directly from Asia. They used intermediaries who acted as wholesalers. Results. I have few graphs. First is number of people employed in the surveyed enterprise. Enterprises from the automotive industry supplying supplies locally, regionally, and throughout the country usually employed up to 9 employees. So they were micro enterprises. The larger the enterprises, the greater the scope of the supply market. These regularities are logical. because smaller companies often do not have the resource and employees to order globally. They then use the services of intermediaries. The statistical test it carried out confirmed that there was a strong, significant relationship between the type of the main supply market and the size of the enterprise measured by the number of employees. Another aspect was the number of suppliers. In this case, the patterns are similar. Companies ordering in the nearest markets usually use a small number of suppliers, up to 5 suppliers. Most often they order parts and components from centers and wholesalers. In turn, companies operating globally had many suppliers. Among the enterprises purchasing supplies on the EU market and globally, 11 had the largest number of suppliers. The statistical test performed confirmed that there was a strong, significant relationship between the type of the main supply market and the number of suppliers. Enterprises representatives could indicate several reasons for the problems in supply chains. As many as 56% of enterprises sourcing locally did not see any problems in their supply chains. The reason in their non-participation in international trade. In this group, 34% of enterprises indicated problems resulting from lockdowns and official closures. In groups of enterprises purchasing regional and national supplies, as many as 51% of enterprises indicate low stocks of materials and products. In the group of the enterprises sourcing globally, as many as 58% of enterprises indicated problems resulting from dependence on supplies from Asia and low stocks of materials and products. The statistical test performed confirmed that there was a strong, significant relationship between the type of the main supply market and the causes of problems in the supply chain. The next question concerned description or problems in the supply chain experienced by the surveyed companies. Similarly, the consequences of the pandemic were felt least strongly by enterprises sourcing locally. In the remaining groups, most enterprises felt the effect of the pandemic in their supply chain. The problems were independent of the size of the supply market. The statistical test performed confirmed that there was a strong, significant relationship between the type of the main supply market and the occurrence of description or problem in supply chain. Enterprise representatives also pointed out the types of description and problems occurring in supply chain during the COVID-19 pandemic. In enterprises sourcing locally, the biggest problem was limiting the timeliness of deliveries. In turn, for 79% of enterprises purchasing supplies from Poland and neighboring countries. The problem was the increase in transport, storage and labor costs. In the case of enterprises with globally supply markets, the fewest enterprises indicate limitations in timely deliveries. A very important problem in all groups of companies where was the long order execution time. The statistical tests carried out allowed us to conclude that there was no relationship between the type of the mine supply market and the type of description and problems in the supply chain. The next question concerned the duration of description. In as many as 61% of enterprises sourcing locally. Description lasted up to half a year. Description lasting from half a year to 1 year were indicated by the majority of enterprises purchasing supplies on the domestic market. Description lasting 1 to 2 years were most frequently cited by companies sourcing globally. The situation was similar in the case of description exceeding 2 years. This was indicated by 5% of enterprises in this group. Typically, the duration of description increased as the supply area increased. The statistical test performed confirmed that there was a strong, significant relationship between the type of the main supply market and the duration of description or problems in supply chains. The next question concerned the return of enterprises to the activity from before the crisis caused the pandemic. As many as 55% of enterprises sourcing locally indicated that the return of activity took up to 3 months. This means that the effect of the crisis were quickly overcome. These types of enterprises did not participate in international trade, so they could have felt lesser effect of the pandemic, which was global. The return of the activity within the period of 3 months to 1 year was indicated by the majority of enterprises purchasing supplies on the domestic market. A period longer than 1 year was indicated by the majority of enterprises purchasing supplies from the markets of neighboring countries. 19% of enterprises purchasing supplies on the global market indicated that the return of pre-pandemic activity was not occurred to date. This proves the long-term impact of the pandemic. In this group, as many as 38% indicate that they had not experienced a crisis. The statistical test performed confirmed that there was a strong, significant relationship between the type of the main supply market and the time to return to activity from before the crisis caused by the pandemic. It then explored ways to address supply chain issues as a result of the pandemic. As many as 79% of enterprises sourcing locally did not look for or use alternative suppliers or receptions. In other groups of enterprises, approximately 50% of enterprises indicated that lack of such activities. This may result from a tactic to wait out the problems, because they will end someday. therefore, no radical action were taken. About 33% of enterprises sourcing regionally and in larger markets, up to globally, look for and use alternative suppliers and recipients. The highest percentage was funding in the case of companies operating globally. Several percent of enterprises in the given groups were looking for, but were unable to use alternative suppliers or reception. The statistical test performed confirmed that there was a strong, significant relationship between the type of the mine supply market and the approaches used during the pandemic. Another aspect concerned the nature of supply chain activities and decision during the pandemic. In most enterprises, operational decision prevailed concerning action here and now in the short term. Only enterprises with global suppliers were strategic decision dominant. They concerned changes in the long term or those that would seriously affect the company in the future. The presented summary shows that enterprises generally undertook short-term adjustment activities. As the supply area grew, strategic decisions became more frequent. The statistical test performed confirmed that there was a weak, significant relationship between the type of the main supply market and the nature of action and decision taken by enterprises during the pandemic, in turn, the supply chain. The next question concerned the duration of the adjustment introduced as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. The vast majority of enterprises indicate the short-term nature of these adjustments, with the highest percentage in enterprises sourcing locally and decreasing as the supply market grows. The opposite tendency was observed in the case of the long-term nature of the changes. This answer was given by the largest number of enterprises using global supply markets, and the least by those operating locally. The statistical test performed confirmed that there was a strong, significant relationship between the type of the main supply market and the nature of changes and adjustment in the company as a result of the pandemic. Finally, I have conclusions. Representatives of enterprises pointed out the types of description and problems are occurring in supply chain during the COVID-19 pandemic, such as limited delivery times, longer order fulfillment times, increased cost. The length of the pandemic's impact of supply chains and the speed of return to previous activity were strictly dependent on the company's supply market. As a rule, during the pandemic, enterprises used short-term and operational rather than strategic adoption measures. The hypothesis was confirmed that description in supply chain during the COVID-19 pandemic in the automotive industry differed depending on the type of the mine supply market, with description occurring more often in enterprise sourcing on a global rather than local scale. Thank you for your attention.